gas tanks and... Oh, how you guys doing? Come back to hang out, did you? Well, got a gas tank for this MGA. We done had her barked off a little bit and, you know, broke her rotor button. It could have been a parts fault, but it's probably a junk fault. Look at this, brand new gas tank. And there's, well, we'll put that down there. I'm not scared of spiders, but there seems to be a large family of large spiders living inside that gas tank we bought almost a year ago. So don't buy your parts till you need them. Anyhow, let me, this way. Get a fuel system in here. Let's find the bolts and the straps and stuff that I'm not really sure where they're at right now at this point. I'll find them. They're in this barn somewhere. Bag and tag your parts, boys and girls. That way you can put them somewhere and never find them again. You know, there's lines and things that I could reuse, but I have to find them. Get a coolant system. Get the fuel system, like I already said that, didn't I? Get this thing so it'll sit here and run. Hopefully, fingers crossed, double fingers crossed, we can get Ralph out here to tell a story about this car and see it run. Just see it run on its own and listen to it. I think we're looking at a fun video. So thanks again for hanging out. Let's have fun this time. Boy, let's do a little cleanup first. Now then, gas tank. Got the spiders out of there. A little bit of air. Boy, they went running like cockroaches, I guess. So, old fuel pump. The original old fuel pump. You know, power, ground, whatever. I bench tested it. Nobody's home. Does nothing. There are contact points in here, and I'm sure that's what's wrong with it. And there's a diaphragm, and we can rebuild it for like $1,300 or buy a new one. But at least for now, we're going to hold on to it, save on to it. For now, we're going to go with more modern, updated thing. Now, these carburetors like 1 to 3 psi. And high volume. So it's low pressure, high volume. There's no mechanical pump, never had one, so that's not a, don't even say it. It's not, you know, I'd go that route if it was a thing, but it's not. Carboil, you know, if it's too much, we'll have to put a pressure regulator on it, but we're gonna do that. Fuel tank, new straps, new rubbers. I think on my old Cadillac, it seems like I just used a bicycle inner tube, cut it up. I used bicycle inner tube on a lot of parts on that car. And it seems that it's holding up fine, it's fine. But in this case, a roll of this stuff right here was pretty cheap. So what I did was, to hold it in place, started one end, went around about a 1-inch overlap on top of the tank, so that underneath you can't see. When Ralph goes to the car shows, they can't go, whoa. But you know, people at car shows do that stuff anyway. So had to find some bolts, and I have more bolts to find. there's an original bolt here, okay, pinches it together. There's a tube on each side where it goes in the frame, and one bolt on each side. This way I can kind of hold it in place, because the inner tube thing was quite a bear, if I remember correctly. And of course this point from here to here might be a little different. Point from here to here might be a little different. So, but what I want to do is get some bolts and nuts started in there to where I can loosen them up and kind of get, you know, when I go to put them in the frame, kind of shimmy stuff around and get it bolted up. Now, I'm going to tell you something else. There's a bolt I found that's going to work just right. I'm not going to put a washer on it, because sometimes you want that bolt head to dig into whatever it's on. You put a washer on it, it can spin. This is one of those cases that I don't want it to spin. And if I remember correctly, when I took it apart, there were no washers in there. Thought it was strange, but it makes sense. If you want a locking bolt to lock, you know, I'm going to use a nice lock washer that I found. Right there. I'll snug it up. This tank is ready to go in. But one more issue I found. Ooh, pretty. Turns out you can put this in any way you want. Up and down is best, obviously. But I don't remember taking it out. Can't find pictures. So if we get her all bolted up with a fuel gauge and a cluster or a dashboard, you know, if it's backwards, we'll know we'll have to take these bolts out and flip this thing around. The other thing is, look at that. It's the size of my finger. I don't have stuff to, you know, go. The old one was painted black. So that means, best I can tell, it was gone because I can't find it. So I bought the line, the factory line that goes from here to the fuel pump, $48. I think by the time you're done with shipping and taxes, it's $53 for this little line that screws on here and goes right about to here. Man. Like I was telling, stuff just kind of accumulates. It's a little dumb stuff, you know, and I can't make a line for that. I don't have the fittings. It's really weird, and you know. All right, check back with you. Put this thing in the car. I've got to find a couple bolts because, well, you know, my organization skills aren't quite what they should be. See ya. Oh, hey y'all, we're next night. It's Tuesday night. Normally it's not important that it's Tuesday night, what night of the week it is, but Sunday Ralph's coming here, so we've got stuff to do, right? So normally I'd talk to you and tell you what I'm doing, and obviously I'm installing a gas tank. Ralph is the owner of this fine automobile that we are currently restoring. So it'll be a fun time to have him in the barn. You know, kind of hope that he'll tell us the story of this whole vehicle, and I think that's the most interesting part of this whole deal. Of course, we can't do it without, you know, having this thing fire, run, and do its thing, you know. Did have to find some new hardware. That 415 is some thick stuff, so anyhow, you gotta get this gas tank in, and I tell you, these English cars are a little bit strange, but one thing I would suggest that American automakers would do is go to this system. If you notice, it's on the floor. I just tip it up, put 2 bolts in it. It's pretty much like a big hinge. As long as I get the bolts all in there. Get a couple things going. So we got lots to do this week. That doesn't line up with, okay, there we go. I kind of left these straps loose so that I can move them around and get things lined up. They're really not bad. Of course, in usual Junk's Automotive fashion, should have probably cleaned them holes out really good first. But we'll see what we can make happen. Alright, so we want to put a drive shaft in here, and there's a reason. I want to have fluid in this transmission that I worked so hard on. If you watched all the videos, you'd know how hard it was. You're saying, Junk, you're not going to drive that thing around the yard. Good idea. It might happen. Not in this video. But I want to be able to keep fluid in this transmission because we're going to run it, we're going to get it hot, we're going to rev it up and have a lot of fun, right? That's the plan. That input shaft and that bearing, I want it to have fluid. I want things to be able to circulate and all that. So, got the drive shaft out here. You know, and this drive shaft's in good shape. I've inspected it. The U-joints are great. You know, they're, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. But I'm gonna, you know what I like? I like the grease. So we're gonna lube up our shaft really good. Dirty minds. Because we don't want to, you know, get our seal dry A little grease never hurt anybody. Now I got a funny story to tell you while I grease up our drive shaft, right? I didn't have hardware. It bolts in back here on the pinion flange. So I dug and dug and dug for about, I don't know, half hour or so. Thought I found the right bolts. I was digging. I'm like, man, you know, this is going to be a pain in the butt if I've got to buy hardware or figure it out and all that. Well, lo and behold, the whole time that I've dug for bolts, I saw this ball of nuts and bolts safety wired together. Safety wire. Look at that. Who did that? The perfect bolts and the perfect nuts for exactly what I needed. Old Ralph Sr., Mr. Airplane Guy, man, you know, he had to have done this close to 50 years ago. In the 70s, early 70s at least. So it's kind of an amazing thing sometimes, especially in this project. You can work on stuff just like that Airstream and know people. I've worked on cars for getting close to 36 years now. I can work on cars after somebody's worked on it and know that man or girl. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of... I'm going to slide that on in there. Get a nut and a bolt. Right now, this drive shaft doesn't look so pretty, but we'll clean it up, throw some paint on it. Alright, well, like I says, got the drive shaft in here. You know, I did Loctited those bolts. You guys and girls, you know, old junk. So, here's a little dipsticky. I did get it out. I let it soak. Soak, and it came out. Put it in my concoction of rust mort, and then Marvel Mystery oil. It's mystery because, you know, so it looks pretty good, right? So we know how full the transmission is. It's one thing we didn't have to destroy or buy. So let's get this thing filled up real quick. Hopefully. Good old 7590 of the Lucas's brand. It's more expensive, but you know, it has stuff in it, I guess. I don't know. This old car needs everything it can get. I don't know how much it holds, but we're going to start with one of these bottles. I got another one. Wednesday night, I think. Yeah. So, fuel tank's in, strapped in, all good to go. That drive shaft's bugging me. I might scrub that down and give her a little paint job. But anyway, it's in. Fluid in the transmission so the input shaft doesn't run dry when we have this little motor humming. I've got some Amazonian fuel line, hard line and soft line. Figured I'd run the, once I get my fuel tube that comes off the tank, because it's great big. I mean, that thing's like that big. That goes to the factory fuel pump, you know, until I know I want to run a hard line. You know what I'm saying? That part's not here yet. Run the hard line kind of where I need to go before the bodies, and I can do it later, maybe temporary, I don't know. Anyway, ignore me. Start on cooling system. We have a crank pulley and a water pump pulley. We don't have a generator, but underneath this MGA, behind this 1957 finally done 4-door to 2-door conversion, there is, let me move that out of the way, okay, 454 CID big block Chevrolet that I plan on putting in maybe that square body dump truck. You guys tell me what you think. But it's way back there, right? And this has an alternator on it. Just roll this out of the way. And it's, if you look through, it's way back there. There's like a 67, 68, 327 that's locked up as well. We might do a video or two on that. Let me find some tools and a light, see if I can get to that thing. Now that's not going to work. I thought this was probably the little 60 ampere, but it's a 100 ampere. We're gonna look at converting this over to an alternator from a generator. I thought I'd use this to mock it up. Well, these are bigger. The brackets are different, and man, without me making some crazy brackets, it's not going to fit for now. But came up with a solution. You see here, this is a timing belt tensioner to, I believe, some early 2000s Chrysler product, and I'm not sure. It was in the old Snap-on box over there. I've worked out of that thing for 25 years, so why it was in there, I couldn't tell you. I never was much of an engine guy, but I did timing belts, did stuff like that, so I don't know. Bolted up one arm down here at this convenient hole, and it lined right up with the boss for the generator. So a couple of 1957 body mount washers, a bolt that'll keep that in place. And what you do is you load these up and you put your grenade pin in. Some of you guys that have done this stuff for a living, you'll laugh, but it worked. We got her bolted in, loaded up the tensioner, set the pin, pulled it out, plunk. So, you ready to see how it works? Should be good enough for test runs. Heck, I'd probably drive this down the road. That'll keep our water pump pumping, the radiator standing up here, and keep the coolant flowing, and check everything, get some heat in it. Man, that's some hillbilly ingenuity right there. Alright, got that part figured out. Happy with that. That was what I wanted to accomplish, so that then tomorrow night we can plug off coolant passages or bypass or whatever and work on getting the radiator set up. Speaking of which, the best of two radiators is right here. Seems pretty clean except for, you know, mouse house stuff been going on. So what I did, put about a quarter, laid it like this over by the garden hose, put about a quarter of a gallon of vinegar, boy I can smell it too, in the radiator, filled up the rest of the water. So we'll let it sit overnight. I'll flush it out back and forth in here, back and forth best I can, just to get any loose stuff. We don't want this going in our engine, you know. If this needs a radiator, it needs a radiator. If this one's good, great. I kind of got my doubts, but you never know. These old radiators were a lot better than the crap they put in cars nowadays. So, I'm going to get a little bit of shut-eye Thursday night. It's going on 10:30, you know, so the little hour and a half or so that I get, and it looks like I'm still leaking oil. I'll tell you about that tomorrow. You know, this is why we do these things. See you in a few. All right. Thursday night. This thing is soaked in vinegar water overnight. Got a piece of white paper there thinking, well, I want to see what comes out of it. Again, this is a radiator sat here like this somewhere 50 plus years. Let's see what comes out of it. It could be fun. It might be nothing. Oh, heavy. All right. Well. Huh. Well, that should do it. For test run purposes, right there. You know, I mean, man, I'm excited. We've got the tune-up kit. I'm going to show you the rotor that's a lot smaller than the one I had, if I can find the old one I had. Plugs and wires and all that. We got fuel line, and tomorrow or the next day I'll have the little jumper fuel line from the tank to the pump. Well, the pump wired in. We're getting there. Man, we're getting there. You know, I almost, man, it's like a really big go-kart. If we only had brakes and a clutch. Man, it's a far to reach. Yeah, it's Saturday. I came out here last night just for a few. I kind of show you what I did. I didn't record. I was kind of wiped out from the week. So, just as a recap, gas tank's in. Here's our fuel line that comes from the big knobby thing, and the gas comes in thing, and it goes over here to where the fuel pump usually is. And for now, we're going to use the little buzz and a filter. We've got a filter here. I've got some just some cheap line. We're just going to run temporary line and wire. Pretty sure there's a kit to change the original pump to a solid state instead of the contact points and be more reliable. I think that's the way we're going to go, and we'll just buy the correct line that goes from here to here. It's like $108 or something. I did kind of dig and wasted a bunch of time looking for whatever's supposed to go in here. There's coolant there, and down here. So, you know, heater hose, heater control, so I'll make a block off and a gasket for this. I can block that off, but I'm like, what is that? And I looked at catalogs and Googled and never could. I finally found that there's a plug that you can put in here for when you're not using a temperature gauge. I thought, wait a minute, I got one of those. It's the original one, and that's what screws into it. So now we can just stab that in there, and you know, we can tell how hot she's getting too. Yeah, like I said, it might be dumb, but I'm not stupid. Well, that could be stupid. So, cooling system, fuel system, some kind of an exhaust system, and you know, there we go. I'll get back with you. Okay, well, fuel system, little electric pump, pre-filter, line, right there, fuel in the tank. Had a couple little leaks and probably still will. The gaskets that come with that kit are, you know, they're rock hard. They're old, and I kind of figured I'd be going through these again. But we should be able to, you know, mostly just the lids on the thingamajiggers, float bowls, and the little gaskets for the, you know, all that stuff's getting replaced anyway. Then I'll get another gasket kit and go through these before we, because we're going to take them back off when we're done with this. You see, I do have a mess. A little sawdust on the floor. Looks like the oil pressure regulator is not working. I believe it's just stuck. Seemed kind of funny we had 80 psi while cranking. That's good, but you know, so I finally got it. I did. Fired it up. Trying to get it running. Didn't have the throttle blades open up enough, and wrapped it. Got it going, and then it just blew the oil filter O-ring out. And I thought, well, yeah, I didn't have that oil filter on tight enough. You know, I've done this for a long time, so okay. Take it apart. Found another oil filter, had the same ring. Put it in it. Tightened it up. Got it good and tight. And I got it running better. Right there it went. I did it again. So now I've got it to where it'll pretty much idle. What I'm hoping is we'll just let it idle, get some heat build up in it. Hopefully that thing unsticks itself, which is probably, you know, it probably will. I don't know. If not, oil pan off. Yeah, I've got a little leak on the back side of it, I think. And if it's still there, I guess we're taking the oil pan off, pulling the oil filter out, or the oil pump out, regulator or whatnot. Might do some looking, because the oil pressure regulator could be this little thing right here. Huh. I just now thought of that. I'll do some looking. Anyhow, in the midst of trying to get the cooling system buttoned up, we have our temperature sensor plugged in. We have our heater core line, goes to the heater core. It's blocked off, but I have this little port. That little port is your shut off. Shuts hot water off to your heater core, so in the summertime you don't have heat anyway. So here it is. Could have bolted up and block it off. Well, I'm going to bolt it up and block it off. Made a gasket. Block off gasket. Yep. Beer box. And then it'll block off plate. That'll go right underneath there. Actually, between here and then the gasket. You know. Beer can. You know. The official sponsor of the channel, I suppose. So let's get that bolted on there. We used to do this all the time for EGR valves when we thought they were sticking. Not closing all the way and causing a vacuum leak. This is how we figured it out. And then back then, you know, you could kind of just leave it in there and it would work just fine. Imagine that. Well, yeah, turns out you guys are right. You usually are. Here's the spring and here's the cap. That spring was just cruddier than all get out. And this valve will not come out. I'm going to zoom you in. Yep. You see how cruddy that looks, right? Yeah, well, it's cruddy and my light's about to die. So I'm going to soak that with a rust penetrant or something. Try to see if I can't get that valve out and get it cleaned up. And so it's stuck going full pressure all the time. I've got to fix that. Yeah, finally got it out. Soaked it. Used this big bolt that fits right in there. Just kept moving it, tapping it in and out, tapping it in and out. Cranked the engine over and watched oil started coming out, and all of a sudden, it came on out. So let me get this cleaned up, see where we're at. Well, we're going to call her a night. Our little oil pressure relief valve fixed our problem. Pretty sure that my gauge is toast now, though. That's okay. Look at that. That old temperature gauge still works. We'll be keeping that one. So I get up in the morning. Well, you know, my morning on a Sunday. Back this thing out, clean up a little bit. You know, kind of clean things up for Ralph. Yep. You're gonna see her run. And 1, 2, 3. Anyway, all right. Ralph, tell us about this car. When did you first see it?
1970.
1970.
About 1970. Pop brought it home. We went and looked at it somewhere, and then he brought it home and put the motor in a crate and sent it off. And then we disassembled the entire thing. And I spent the summer wire brushing, not a wee wire brush,
just like this.
Wire brush and scraping paint, and then painted the whole thing Rust-Oleum black.
It probably saved it.
And then the body got set back on it within about 3 years, and then we brought it back here, and apparently everybody in the family spent a summer doing something to it, but it never ran. So.
So we brought it over here with the engine just sitting in there.
Yeah.
Not hooked up.
Nope.
Body just sitting on the
Yep.
frame, and a couple truckloads of parts.
Yep. And now look at it.
Now it's kind of, it's a little bit farther ahead. Well, let's set this thing up so we can run it.
All right.
So what do you think, Ralph?
That's cool. That's sweet.
I'm glad you're happy with it. It's been some work.
Yeah, I know.
You got a lot left.
Yeah, I know.
You like sanding, don't you?
I'll come out. We'll sand.
Stir to come help, won't you?
Sanding now.
Yeah. No.
Is this like snipe hunting? Is this another fun thing?
Yeah, it's something like
it's like
that.
painting
Yeah.
fences.
Yeah.
Wire brush.
Yep.
Well.
Yeah, I'll get the brothers out.
Uh-huh.
They were supposed to do that part. So you want me to tell you a story then?
Yep.
I got a story about, that other band I'm in, CPR Revival?
Uh-huh.
We were on our way to Richmond one day, and Mark Drews was driving. Mark's a bass player,
Mm-hmm.
And we were in his Chrysler minivan, and Chris Wolf was in the passenger seat. Anyway, we're on our way. We're running behind. So there we are on 40. We get pulled over. And when we get pulled over, Mark says, just before we get pulled over, Mark says, "Oh, shit, there's a cop. I hope he doesn't pull me over." And about that time, the cop turned on his lights. We get pulled over. And the policeman walks up and he says, "Do you have any idea how fast you're going?" And Mark says, "No." And Chris says, "Well, yeah, you do, Mark. Before he pulled you over, you said, 'I hope he doesn't pull us over because I'm doing 40 miles over the speed limit.'" And Mark said, "Shh." And the officer said, "I need to see your license and registration." So he got the license and registration, and he looked at it and he said, "Sir, did you realize your driver's license has been expired for 3 years?" And Mark said, "No, I didn't know that at all." And Chris said, "Well, yeah, you did. When we got in the van, you said, 'Well, I hope we don't get pulled over because my driver's license has been expired for 3 years.'" And Mark said, "Could you be quiet?" And then the police officer said, "I'll be right back." And he come back and he says, "Do you realize your tail light's out too?" And Mark says, "No, I did not know that." And Chris says, "Well, yes, you did. When we got ready to leave the house, you said, 'Well, I hope I don't get pulled over today because my tail light's out.'" Then it just went on and on and on. And finally the officer said, "Well, I'm going to have to write you a ticket for speeding and not having the right driver's license and I forgot where this story was going.
Tail
Oh
light. The tail light, yeah.
And the tail light and Mark says, "Well, I didn't know any of that." And Chris says, "Well, yes, you did. You told us all before we left that you hope you didn't get pulled over today because you're just bound and determined you was going to get a ticket if you did." And finally, Mark turned to Chris and said, "Would you just shut up?" And the officer looked in and asked Chris. He says, "Is he always so grouchy?" And Chris said, "No, only when he's been drinking." Here's my ass. You can kiss it. Take my heart so you won't miss it in the count of broken hearts you left behind. There's to you, there's to me, there's to all that we will never be together now. You changed your mind, you changed your mind and left me all alone. You said you'd never, and you never come back home. Here's to us like before, when I carried you through that door. Don't let it hit you down. You've changed your mind. Kiss it, take my heart so you won't miss it like I miss you now. You changed your mind, it's all over now. You changed your mind.
If you do it and you got fucking 6 months.